Hey, it's me, Ginger, back with another book review, and today I'm going to be reviewing Being James Bond by Joseph Darlington. And the reason I picked this book is because Joe Darlington is he's a podcaster. He's got a great podcast, Being James Bond, and he's part of the sort of community of YouTubers and creators, sort of the Bond community. And I recently actually got a chance to meet him when I was at one of these Bond community meetups in Newtown, Pennsylvania, and it was great bloke. And it made me think, because I met Joe and all sorts of other people who were into Bond, and a lot of them had sort of written books and things, and I thought I should actually take the time to go through and read all of the books and things that these people have created. So I started off with Joe's book, Being James Bond. So this book is about how you can be like James Bond, and it was kind of an interesting concept. So I downloaded it, paid full price, and jumped straight into it and read through, and I enjoyed it immensely. The book opens with Joe sharing not just sort of how he got into Bond movies and things like that, but also this great trip he had to Switzerland, where he drove 4 hours across the mountains to try and go to the same place that Pierce Brosnan did his big bungee jump in the opening moments of GoldenEye, and that didn't work out so well for him. But it was really entertaining to read, to follow along with these misadventures and things. So I really enjoyed the opening of the book, and from there Joe kind of structures the book along the concept of, hey, James Bond is the ultimate Renaissance man. He knows everything about everything. But you know what? It's not beyond the realms of possibility to learn to do the things that James Bond does. So he splits up the book into sort of instructions on some of the core James Bond skills. So he starts off with how to play poker, which I actually found really interesting, because I've never quite got my head around poker. But the book series that I'm writing at the moment has a climax which is kind of Casino Royale inspired. And so I found that a really useful chapter to read, because it helped me get my head around how to play poker. And I know Joe is actually a superstar poker player himself, so that chapter had some real authority to it. And then he goes on to other skills, like how to set up a cocktail bar, how to ski, even how to fly a plane, which was interesting. And so, if you ever find yourself in a James Bond situation, it's a good book to have in your Kindle, because you're like, okay, I need to fly a plane. Got it. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The thing that really got to me was the fact that it was almost like the kind of book that I would have written. I am exactly the kind of person, when I get into something, I'm like, I should write a book about this. And when I got into intermittent fasting, first thing I did was write a book about it. I'm sure there is something to be said about the Dunning-Kruger curve there. But I really enjoyed it because it was just really heartfelt, really honest. You could tell that Joe is just a really passionate Bond fan, and just an entertaining storyteller. I really enjoyed it. I will say though that in terms of a book, I think this is more of an introduction to sort of Joe's podcast, Being James Bond, because the book is limited in its scope intrinsically, because it's he teaches you these Bond skills, and then there are lots more skills you can learn. So it's almost like the book needs to be constantly updated and expanded with new segments about how to do new things. And of course, that's difficult to do in a rigid structure like a book. And so what I can say is go along to Joe's podcast, Being James Bond, and you can get more of the same that you find in the book, except read by him, and he's really entertaining broadcaster, and there's new and fresh content all the time. So I would say this is more like a teaser for his podcast than a book I would sort of recommend standing on its own 2 feet. But it was a really entertaining read, really well written, and I liked it a lot. So check it out, and if you don't check that out, definitely check out Being James Bond, the podcast, because it's really entertaining. And the Joe just knows his stuff, and when he goes down a rabbit hole of something he's really passionate about, it's really entertaining, because it's kind of infectious, that passion. I remember he was on the live broadcast of the Bond experience, was it Operation Stay at Home or something, and he did this segment on the Bond books, and I was just enthralled, because I had it on the background while I was pottering around tidying up the house, and I just stopped what I was doing and listened to it, and I loved every word of it. So yeah, Joe's great entertainer, massive Bond fan and expert, and it was a real treat to get inside his head a bit by reading this book. Anyway, I'll wrap this up because the dog's going nuts, and I'll be back with another book review soon. Cheers.